All right, we'll now call the May 30th regular city council meeting to order for 6 p.m. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Be Pastor John Beck from the First Baptist Church.
Let's bow for a word of prayer. Lord, we thank you for just the privilege to gather as a city and a community. Lord, I thank you for the men and women that you have allowed to lead this city and to guide us. So, Lord, as always, I pray for wisdom, that they would lead in accordance to your will and your purpose. And, Lord, I pray that we as a community would continue just to lift them up in prayer. And, Lord, I do pray for our city and all the great things I know can be accomplished through it to help reach this city for Christ and encourage others to know you, Lord, but build a sense of community. We love you. We pray these things in the precious name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated.
I would like to go on record that this is my Fellowship of Christian Athlete outfit, not the pastor outfit, so I don't want to shock everybody.
I like that.
We appreciate it.
You swear?
Mr. Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Councilmember Gray.
Here.
Councilmember Spurlock.
Here.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Here.
Mayor Anderson.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I do notice that we have a very nice
Yes.
Avon Park emblem behind us here.
How about that?
All right.
Was that done
Beautiful.
by Danielle?
Danielle is the one that hand painted that. It was originally the red, and she just filled it all in with our logo colors now.
Well, we thank her very much
Yeah.
for that.
My
She did.
compliment. That's
She did a fine job on it.
very fine.
Alrighty, first up under consent agenda, we have the approval of the minutes from May 13th, 2019. Be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of the regular scheduled city council meeting, May 13th, 2019.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or changes? Seeing none, we will call the roll.
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock.
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Next up, item number 5, we have Corbett Alday, CDBG grant.
Antonio.
We appreciate it nonetheless. What do you have for us?
We're going to be covering some information about your CDBG Housing Rehabilitation Grant.
Okay.
Again, thank you for allowing me to give you a presentation this evening to give you a little bit more information about the grant that should be rapidly coming to the point where we should be starting here very soon. Again, this is the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG for short, with the housing rehabilitation category. We're going to kind of use this presentation as our fair housing activity for the quarter as well. So we'll cover that in the next slide that is down from the introductory slide. The City of Avon Park is a fair housing entity, does not discriminate based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If anyone in the audience feels that they have been discriminated against when they're looking to purchase, rent, or any other type of real estate transaction, locally you can contact the city manager's office, or you may contact the state of Florida and or HUD. The next slide will have various contact information for HUD and or the state. Again, that not only applies for this particular grant, but it applies for any real estate or fair or housing transaction here in the city limits of Avon Park. Unfortunately, if you live outside the city limits, I don't have the contact information, but you can contact the state of Florida and or HUD for any of those instances. Now, I won't bore you because I don't want everybody to run me out of here with pitchfork and torch. Usually these kind of informational sessions will take an hour, hour and a half. Nobody wants that to happen today. So we're going to go through the slides fairly quickly, and then I will answer any questions or anything like that that you may have.
Wonderful.
Again, the program is the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG program. It's a program established by HUD for the purpose of assisting qualified individuals and families with rehabilitation and repairs of their home. Those repairs are generally related to code, or what they call housing quality standards, which include health and safety items. We'll get into a little bit more of what those are as we move down the slide. Eligible rehab assistance activities, code violations, items which do not meet the current Florida Housing Building Code. These items primarily include roofing, electrical issues, plumbing issues, and definitely structural issues, windows, doors, not listed, but your foundation and things of that nature. Health and safety, which again also include housing quality standard, or HQS standards, include things like lead-based paint abatement, could be asbestos abatement, kitchen issues, cabinets, things of that nature, flooring, if you have tile flooring or vinyl flooring or whatever those things are. They can also cross over into what you call the general property improvements, which we'll touch on here in a second. Disability and access, that is the big thing because the grant is predicated on helping elderly, low-income families, and things in the area like that. So, if you have a disability or something like that, we can put in walk-in showers, access ramps, handrails, grab bars. We can even do, if the home will allow it, we can also do door widening, things of that nature. But again, that just depends on the property. But it is an eligible activity. Last, but not least, because most people want their house to be beautified, there's a saying, it's rehabilitation, not remodeling. This program is all about rehabilitating to code and health and safety standards. But when you're talking to a homeowner, a lot of times it's about paint, and it's about, I want this and I want that, and getting into those things, they are eligible, but they are on the bottom rung for consideration, because everything has a budget. We won't, like I said, we won't get into the mud and the miasma of it here. But those things are eligible. It just has to be prioritized, if that makes sense. Energy Star and weatherization, it is required. We wouldn't be here talking about the grant if we didn't have some sort of weatherization or Energy Star requirements for this particular program. FDEO, Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, who the city applies to in order to receive this grant, requires that we have that in what they call a housing assistance plan. That is the document that governs this particular grant. It has everything that we're going to be talking about here today and a ton more. Again, as a minimum, the city has pledged to assist a minimum of 11 homeowners or households. Again, that is usually broken out into a subset. Usually at a minimum, you have to, and we'll get into this in the next slide, which is up on the screen here, very low income households. There's usually a minimum of 2 that we have to qualify or serve. And then what they call low income households, there's generally 2 of that particular status or rank that we have to serve. And then everyone else can be up to 80% of the area median income, which segues nicely into this. That's the federal fiscal year 2019 income limit summary. These are the current income guidelines in which, when we get to that point where we're taking applications and we're qualifying households based on income, these are those particular limits. As you can see, they rise as the number of people in the household rise, with the average household number being about 4. They have increased over the past couple of years. So as you can see, that is what we're dealing with. And we'll go down to number 4 there, because again, that's the average for a household for what they call 30%. That is the very low income category. That is $25,750. For the low income category, $25,850, and for what they call the median or moderate income level, it's $41,350. And again, it increases, believe it or not, it increases up to a household of 15. If you have 15 people in your house, I'm gonna be honest with you, you probably can't help it. There's just not enough money in the program for that. But that is what those income limits are. General requirements. The home must be owner occupied. and free of all delinquent liens or debts, including but not limited to local utility and code infraction fines. Family or individual must be income qualified by the city and fall within those federal fiscal year income guidelines that we just discussed. Any changes in your household size or your income, those have to be reported as they happen. That way we can make the necessary adjustments to see if you still qualify for the program or not. Assisted homeowners must maintain insurance during the dwelling for the duration of the DPL. That's deferred payment for, just to kind of give you one for reference, that's what they call a mortgage. It's a mortgage for terms of the grant. And we'll cover that a little bit more because that always makes people's eyebrows raise a little bit when you say mortgage and note. The overall process, again, this is what the city has undertaken most of this already. We're kind of about halfway down the list now. HUD environmental review and release of funds. Trust me, it's a whole bunch of paperwork, very uninteresting. Special conditions. The state will come back and say, hey, we've got your application, you've submitted your environmental review status. These are the special conditions we need you to meet, whatever they may be. They can range from, again, increasing the number of VLI households that we serve, all the way to something, hey, you missed a sinkhole or something like that. So it can be far ranging there. Orientations. After we've done all that for the state, we get the grant, we get what they call a notice of release of funds. Then we generally have orientation. So if you're loud and lucky, you get a little bit of a pre-orientation. And then we go through this same information, again, in much greater detail at those orientations. Applicant and contractor intake process. That's where we're just about at that stage now. There will be an advertisement ran in the newspaper. It'll be advertised all across the city. Every now and again, if we don't get the right participation, folks from my office will get in our car and we'll just drop off flyers and things like that to local organizations, churches, or police stations, schools, or anybody who may be interested in the particular, in participating in the program. Inspection and qualification process. You think I'm boring you here today? If I happen to be your inspector, I'll be twice as boring because I'll get you with a lot of technical stuff and we'll go through a whole bunch of information about the inspection process and what your house qualifies for and what it does not. Tier 2 inspections and site clearance, that is another level of environmental clearance. That's something we have to do for every site, every home, every project that we undertake. It has to go through a stack of paperwork about this much to make sure that your house is actually environmentally eligible to be serviced. Rehab and bidding process, we'll do that through a formal kind of procurement process. Contractors who are part of that process will also have to be qualified just like the applicant so that the city is making sure that you get the best possible service from licensed, insured, and otherwise eligible contractors. Rehab and award process, that's kind of an administrative thing, but the CDBG grant does require that any homeowner who is serviced, they have what they call the right of contractor selection. Once we get a bid, let's just say we get 10 bids, after bringing those 10 bids to you, we say, hey, here's the recommended bid based on the rules, but you have the chance to select that contractor within certain parameters. And then once we have the contract selected, the contractor selected, we'll go through a rehab and award process. That's basically 8 and 9, should be 8 and 8A because they go hand in hand. You'll sit down and you'll sign a contract with that contractor. Just a point of note for those who hear, that contract that you sign will be between the homeowner and the contractor. The city only acts as a funding agent and, for lack of a better term or better phrase, a project management agent. That contract, again, will be between the homeowner and the contractor. Construction and project management phase, that's just like it's, it is what it sounds like there. We'll sign that contract, and then we'll be ready to start the construction phase or hammer and nails phase, and then we will go ahead and manage that from beginning to end. And then the grant closes out once all 11 homes or projects have been served. Could be more. It generally sticks right at about 11, but sometimes you get 12 or 13. But at any rate, at the end of that last home, the project will close out. Applicant qualification. Applicants attend a homeowner's orientation for Q&A. Again, that is very similar to what we're doing here, except it's in a bit more of a non-public setting. We just get a bunch of folks together who are interested in the program, and then we go through the fine details. Applicant obtains and completes application and submits all secondary documentation requirements, including conflict of interest statement found within the assistance application. Again, conflict of interest only applies to those who are directly employed by the city or have some sort of official business or capacity within the city. Application review for completeness. Once we have your application, we'll go through, there are a number of things that you have to have for backup, bank statements, retirement, pensions, et cetera, things that we have to use to follow, to verify that you are income qualified for the particular grant. Applicants submit any missing application documents. Again, you will submit those if they are missing. The important note about that is the grant, pretty much all housing grants have gone to a first come, first approved, first served basis. So it's important that when you go through the orientation and start filling out that application, that you have everything in one shot. There's a detailed list of what you need. Some of it's a bit harder to get than other things. So if you need help with that, again, my firm will be glad to walk you through that particular process as needed. Applicants approved includes title search and encumbrances clearance. That means not only do you have to qualify, but your home has to qualify. Have to make sure that the city's putting money into a project that's not going to be repossessed or anything like that. Classified, notified, and serviced according to City Housing Assistance Plan. That's the HAP plan that we were talking about. Once you go through and you get qualified, your home has been qualified, you will be listed in accordance to generally first come, first approved, but again, with those parameters that we talked about before, the VLI and LI preferences that we have to consider in order to meet our contract agreement with the state. Inspection performed on the property to determine rehabilitation needs, site and cost feasibility. Again, not only do you have to qualify, but your home and the site has to qualify. There are a number of environmental factors, believe it or not. You have gopher tortoises, you have an eagle in your backyard, all those things make it very, very difficult to service you in a manner that is cost feasible. And I laugh because of the pain. Again, applicant qualification continued. Okay, there we go. Lead-based paint, asbestos testing performed. Again, if required, if your home was built prior to 1978, lead-based paint will have to be conducted on it. Generally, asbestos or ACM material doesn't have an age limit. It just depends on what will be, what the rehab process will be in your home, if it's major or if it's minor. Work write-ups and scope of works completed. When we come out to do those inspections, you'll see we all have a little notepad and we'll be jotting down things in our ticket scraps. That work write-up and scope of work is just the formal version of that where it's typed up. Final review of applicant and property qualifications performed. Again, we do one last check to make sure that we're in compliance with all state requirements. Pending qualification and assistance award denial letter will be sent to an applicant. Again, if you qualify, you will get notified. If you do not qualify, you will get notified. Mobile homes or manufactured homes are only eligible for replacement, which means we have to tear them down and replace them. The bid process, after you go through all of that rigmarole, and you're just about tired of dealing with me and the folks that work with me, we go through the bid process. That's where essentially we'll make this slide really fast. You'll get a call from my office saying Antonio is going to bring you contractors through your house. They're going to take that scope of work that you have a copy of, and then we're going to go through and let them get you a good bid price. That usually takes 2 weeks. Once they're submitted, they're reviewed for accuracy, and then award recommendation is made. And then very shortly after that, you'll get another call saying Antonio is going to be bringing the contractor bids to your house for contractor selection and approval. I know this is getting long, so I'm trying to speed it up here. Next slide, please. Award and contract signing. Once the bids are approved, again, you get that selection process. Once we have all of that done, we sit down for what we call a contract sign, or the DPO, deferred payment agreement sign. What that is an agreement saying that you have to abide by certain stipulations set forth in the housing assistance plan. For instance, you have to keep the house as your primary residence. You can't sell it or convert it or make it a rental or anything like that without triggering what they call recapture or repayment. If you meet all those conditions, there's zero interest, zero payments associated with this particular grant for the term of 5 years, and it's given 20% each year until it goes away at the end of year 5. Again, I know that's a lot, and it's not much detail behind it, but again, I don't want to keep you here all night for that. But I'll be glad to answer any questions at the end of this. And then, once you sign the contract, nothing is legal for 3 days. You get a chance to read it, review it. It's what they call the right of 3-day rescission. And if you decide that you want to continue forward, you do nothing. If you decide you want to back out, there's a form that you'll be able to submit to the city and/or my firm. Construction and payment. Construction will generally begin within 10 business days after the 3-day rescission, and that's generally for pulling permits or things like that. Or if they have to sit down with you and make color style selections on any applicable items. Homeowner will be asked to move out in the case of extreme rehab or replacement. Obviously, if you're tearing down your house, you can't really be in it. That's not a good thing. In cases where you have to move out, there's what they call temp reload assistance, and that's available on a case-by-case basis. It's generally $1,000 at move out and $1,000 at move in. You have to sign a W-9 form for city tracking and all that good stuff. But again, those are things that we will walk you through. Construction length, 45 to 60 days for rehab, 120 to 150 days for replacement. During the summer, that generally extends a little bit because it's Florida and it rains. If you have a lot of exterior rehabilitation, that can go to 80 days or to 170, 75 days. Contractor payments must be signed and approved by you, the homeowner, by someone from my firm, generally by me, and then a city representative will sign up on it last and it will go for processing. Summary of the CDBG assistance terms. Assistance consists of a 5-year deferred, 0 interest, 0 payment loan, mortgage, and note, i.e. the DPL. If replacement is necessary, the CDBG funding will be matched with State Housing Initiative Partnership funding or SHIP funding. That is because generally we can't exceed $80,000 in CDBG costs, and houses right now, I think the cheapest I'm building them for is about $114,000. So that is again going to need some bridge funding or gap funding there. The CDBG DPL is forgiven in tiers according to the amount of assistance received. Again, $80,000 max every year until the maturation of the note, as long as the following occurs. Again, title does not change hands in sale or inheritance. No conversion of the property or rental. So it has to maintain and be your primary residence, and you can't convert that into a rental or business or lease or anything like that. It has to be your primary residence. SHIP DPL and mortgage forgiveness period may differ from that of the CDBG program. Once we get to that point, and if you need, well, it's not a matter of need, you will be given the information on what that SHIP deferred payment loan term is. I don't have that right now. I think that SHIP money is coming from Highlands County. I think they're in the process of maybe updating their, what they call local housing assistance plan, or LHAP. So I want to make sure I have the current information on that before I spout that out and I'm wrong. Owner must maintain property dwelling insurance during the length of the DPL. Again, just simple as it sounds, you have to have insurance for the duration of that DPL, which is 5 years. Home must be maintained and remain free from code enforcement infractions as much as possible. FAQs, frequently asked questions. How much do I have to pay? It's a 0 out of pocket. No one should be asking for any money at any time. The only time that you may be required to pay something back, again, if you qualify for the program, sign the contract, and register agreements in that contract. Again, not making the home your primary residence, selling it, or whatever the case may be.
Can you repeat that? You're breaking up. I didn't hear
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
last part.
How much do I have to pay? You don't have to pay anything. No one should ask anybody for any money out of pocket. The only time that someone may be required to pay something back is if they break those covenants that are in that deferred payment lien or mortgage and note. And again, that'll be depending on what year it's in,
Yeah. Okay.
and how much, how far down the line you are. Do I have to move out? Again, depends on the scope of what's being done to your home. Again, if it's a tear down, it's a no-brainer. But sometimes you go into homes with a lot of mold and things like that, and it's just unsafe when you're going through the abatement process. Where do I move? That's where the temp reload funds come in. Those $1,000 that move out and $1,000 that move in. Unfortunately, the city and/or guardian can't help you find a specific place to stay. We can only give you that temp reload. The state considers where you move to or how long you have to go. They consider that what they call owner's contribution. We will work with you to see if we can, if you have family or friends or something like that. But most of the time, unfortunately, it's up to you to find where you're going to be relocated to for that temporary period of time. Do I have any input about the work? To a degree. You get color choices. If you get a new house, we have some small input on the plans and the floor layout. But keep in mind, you have to follow the state regulations as to what we can and can't do. What if I want additional work done? Unfortunately, what I'll tell you here, this is the correct answer, but I just say no up front. Not until we've completed all of our work, because it conflates warranty and other things that the city will provide as a part of the program. So if you want something done after we close out completely, then you're able to contact that contractor or any other contractor to have additional things completed. But I always warn against that, because if you do cross-contaminate, then you void your warranty from the original program contract. Next slide, we'll get to the end, I promise. If you have a question or problem, who should you call? That 888 number, that's my office, and the 352 number is my office. Eventually, if whoever's serviced will get my cell phone, and like 40% of the state of Florida, you will have that and be able to get me even on Sundays when I don't really want to answer. When you call, please, most of the time you'll be calling my office. Just give them your name, your address, and if it's a question pertinent to me, then they'll trust me, my office knows how to track me down too. And then we'll get any information that you need back out to you in a timely manner. Just realize sometimes that I can't get right back to you immediately. It may take a couple of hours, but I never go longer than a day without getting back in touch. You may also contact the city manager here, and his number is below. Thank you. Questions?
I have a question, please.
Yes, sir.
What happens if during that 5-year process, after the work is finished, the homeowner passes away, and let's say has a will, he leaves it to a family member? What happens under that situation?
If it's after the 5 years, nothing will happen. But if it's during the 5 years, there are processes in place that will allow us to, if that family member qualifies for the grant, then they can roll right over into that deferred payment lien. If they do not, it will trigger the recapture program upon sale, or they will have to, if they're going to live in the house, they'll have to make an agreement with the city saying, this is how much we're going to repay, this is what we can repay until that debt is fulfilled.
Can the city forgive that?
Yes, you can. You can forgive that. I know it sounds harsh, but generally I will caution against that, because once you set that precedent, you have a line of people. But if you put a policy in place for specific hardships or something like that, something you can always refer to, if you're going to forgive it, I would suggest that you have a policy or something like that in place.
I have a question regarding that along those lines. We had a recipient of one of these grants at the last housing.
Correct, I remember.
She passed away in the middle of those 5 years. And then the daughter she was in a nursing home, died during those 5 years, and then the bank repossessed it. So then the bank came to council wanting it to be forgiven because they wanted to sell it, and
Correct.
they can't sell it unless
You forgive correct.
we forgive the lien. But she died, and the family has no desire. They don't live here. There's no one in this area. So the city ends up with an empty house that's not being taken care of, and
Well, in that case, that's in the best interest of the city. The language of the program always says what's in the best interest of the homeowner and of the city and of the program. In that case, you're going to have an empty house. That's no good for the city when it can be sold and you can be getting revenue from that, or you can have a house that doesn't go into blight from just sitting empty. So yeah, in those cases, in those technical cases, by all means, you have the right and probably responsibility to do so as well.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
And there's several, and a lot of them are for the benefit of the audience as well, of people that might be potential recipients, as well as people that know potential recipients. Are the council allowed to hand out applications and or assist with applications?
After there's
Even though we may not be related to anybody, where there's no familial relationship or anything, can we assist?
Yes, you can, but only after the formal advertisement has been placed in the paper. So 24 hours after that, you can. Again, it's the consultant in me. I caution against that, because if you get people talk sometimes. Well, commissioner, council members, such and such helped me get this. Well, they didn't help me. Sometimes you can cause an unintentional storm. But it is, if you're going to do that, I would say you do it in a structured manner where you, again, have a notice in communities and say, hey, council members are gonna be helping with this here, this date and time, so that everybody has the same opportunity to participate. Because what you don't wanna do is get into a fair housing complaint. Hey, council member such and such helped me here. Well, I didn't know about it. Why didn't they help me?
Well, if an individual asks for the help, because there are many elderly people that don't have access to a computer, don't have a car, don't know anybody that's going to
Correct.
help them with it. They can't go get their social security information or bank draft information, so they need someone to drive them around and go help them.
That is what you have us for.
Okay.
They contact us, we help them get that information.
But even prior to an application submittal, you would do that?
First of all, we shouldn't be doing anything until that advertisement, but if somebody hasn't submitted an application and they need help with those instances, yes, they call our office, and then we will get that ball rolling for them.
Okay, so you say it's on a first-come, first-served basis. That means that anyone can submit a mediocre application with hardly anything in it, be the first in line, and then you're going to help them fill out the rest of that application, and they've bumped up the very
No, an
beginning of the
incomplete
line?
application does not get timestamped. So if it's an incomplete application, it won't be considered. I can give someone in here an application today and they can hand it to you. If it's incomplete, it's not a complete application. So it's first come, first served, first approved. First come, first approved, first served. And an incomplete application is not eligible for approval.
Okay, and in terms of the approval, you are the only one that can approve and score them, am I correct?
Well, we will approve and score them, but we have to bring it back before you all
Right.
to give that final,
But a
correct?
completed application has to be approved and scored by someone outside of the city, outside of this council, which would be you, the consultant.
Correct.
Okay, and that is something that I think needs to be made clear, because we are not going, if someone wants, can you drop off an application, Maria? Well, okay, I'll drop it off, see ya, okay? They submit their initial thing, and then you're gonna help them after the fact. But, if that
No.
person ends up getting qualified,
Now, I'm not saying you can't help them. You
Right.
can. You have the right to help them. I'm just saying be careful with that
Right.
because you could run into some unintended troubles.
okay.
That's all I'm saying.
So what you're saying is that if I wanted to host let me help you fill out your application at my building at an open place and invite everybody that's open can come and do it, then that would be okay?
Yes, because
Okay.
that's information that's been put out citywide because anybody who wants to participate,
They can.
they had the chance to look in the paper or wherever you advertise it, as long as it's kind of a publicly recognized advertisement place, you can.
And
Again,
that's-
you don't have to take, that is just me being overly cautious.
I
You can
got you.
do, once that advertisement is in the paper, individually you can do what
You just can't get
want.
paid for it.
Correct. You
Yes.
definitely can't get paid for it.
Right,
Definitely
I'm
can't
just
get
clarifying that.
paid for it. Definitely can't get paid for it.
Right.
I have a question when Marie.
Okay, well,
Can't even take tips.
just jump in if it's along the
Okay,
lines,
let-
because I have several others.
Okay, but let me just ask you this. Let's say when we did this at one time before, there was rumors out there that, okay, if you got SHIP for help 20 years ago and you can't get any assistance now, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
That
How
has
does
nothing to do
work?
with your CDBG program.
Okay.
Now, it may affect them if there was a tear down and replacement and they got SHIP assistance before. That depends on county policy. That is kind of
Okay.
above and beyond what we can dictate unless you have an interlocal agreement that states someone has had SHIP assistance within whatever time period, and now they're part of the CDBG program for Avon Park, that they are granted an automatic waiver for that rule or
I got you.
regulation or whatever it may be.
But the house would have to be in a lot of disrepair, which would have meant that SHIP fund was a long time ago, otherwise it wouldn't qualify. Can you merge SHIP with CDBG? Or does it have to be all the CDBG spent first and then the SHIP?
No, the state requires that we spend it kind of
At the
on
same
an equal
time?
footing. So, for instance, if we do a house that's $10,000, $5,000 is CDBG, $5,000 is SHIP. The first draw is $2,000 for the contractor. That comes out of CDBG. The next draw is $2,000. That would have to come from SHIP.
And you will let staff know that when they do the drawdown?
Yes, there will be a piece of paper. It'll have bright yellow highlights on it to say which fund that it's going to be coming from.
Okay.
Let me ask a question.
Go ahead.
Suppose if a person had been approved for SHIP funds and it wasn't enough to have, every time they talk to a contract, let's say they got approved for $30,000 for rehab. But every time they talk to a contractor, it's more than what they can do. So can that person apply for assistance on this
Again,
CDBG again?
again, for CDBG, has nothing to do with the county SHIP program. It's a separate program. The only thing that overarches is that they've pledged a certain amount to go with your CDBG program. Again, if they don't need any SHIP funds, it won't matter because your program is a separate program. Now, you do have a stipulation in your housing assistance plan that says if they've received CDBG assistance before, there is a waiting period as well. I think in the last housing assistance plan, it was 5 years. So I'm pretty sure it's going to stay the same here. But generally, what we did, I think the last grant we did was right at 5 years ago. It was getting around that time.
So what you're saying is that someone that received funds for rehab 5 years ago under CDBG can reapply for another rehab?
Correct. If that time is up, they can reapply.
But then wouldn't that be considered, I mean, would it have to be something separate than what they had done before? Like, let's just say they had the roof replaced 5 years ago and now they want the electrical done because that's gone to pot. Or can they reapply for another roof?
Well, they can reapply for another roof as long as it's bad, as long as it's a valid concern.
But what if it was worked under the original CDBG 5 years ago?
Well, you've had storms and you have all kinds of things that will happen. Now, they shouldn't need a roof because the warranty that we give them under the program is 5 years. So if it's just 5 years, I'll look at that on that basis and say, hey, you need to contact your contractor because your warranty is still applicable. So there are fail-safes to keep people from, for lack of a better term, double and triple, quadruple dipping sometimes.
Okay. I had also, I think that the consulting firm applied, I think, was it $90,000 in the, was that the top amount administrative cost that's allowed under the grant?
It is not.
I think it was it 8%?
I think you can do 112 out of the $750,000 grant. I think you can do up to 112.5 in administrative costs. And if you were so generous, I think you could give all of that to the consultant. But I'm not sure what we bid. That is kind of a Corbett thing. I'm just a grunt.
Okay, so I think it was
Yeah, very
90, and
good
I'm
one.
just giving a safe number. I don't know if they have that information there. So in doing the math, you're saying that now a total new rebuild is about $114,000.
Correct.
5 years ago, it was $75,000.
Correct.
Okay, under that premise, there's only 7 homes that get replaced versus the 16 or so that we did 5 years ago.
Well, you're probably only going to replace with today's
And that's
current
including the
prices
ship, by the way.
about 2 homes. That's what I'm
Okay.
seeing everywhere else. Everything else has to be a rehab. Because, like I said, everywhere else I'm doing this, and I'm doing this in some places with a similar makeup, similar economy to Avon Park. And we're generally getting about 2 homes. Everything else has to be a rehab. Because we're not getting as far as
I
we
don't
used to
have that.
get with the funds these days.
There's
And again,
9.
no matter what, you
It
can
was
only
90?
maximize a
90.
home at $80,000. That's the max your housing assistance plan will allow for any one project.
So a contractor that now knows this number, I mean, hopefully they'll come in at a lot less than that, or have the houses in their design and scope of whatever. What's the square foot of a typical home?
For a family of 4, it's depending on the makeup, but let's just say it's a family of 4, mom, dad, 2 sisters. You get a 2-bedroom, 2-bath at 1,000 square foot.
And that's what was done in the past?
Correct.
Okay, so 2,000 square feet?
No, 1,000 square
I'm sorry,
feet.
1,000 square feet, okay, and that fits our LDR, because I remember that had to change. Mobile homes. You're saying that it has to be a complete replacement of a mobile home, and I don't know that our LDR allows for new mobile homes.
No, when I say complete replacement, it goes back to the single-family home. It won't go back with a mobile home.
But that is a single-family home. I mean, a mobile home could be a
Well-
single-family home.
A site-built single-family home. A mobile home is not considered site-built.
Okay.
It's actually considered a mobile
But you
vehicle.
said, but did you not say that if there is a mobile home, it has to be completely, you can't do rehab on that, it
Correct.
has to be complete replacement?
Correct.
Okay, so if we have a whole new replacement of a mobile home, does our LDR allow that?
No.
So we can't do it?
Well, in most
What about-
cases, those are walk away, but believe it or not, I am
What's walk
working-
away? What's walk away?
I can't. I have to
You
tell the
can't do
homeowner
it.
it's ineligible.
Okay.
It's an ineligible for LDR,
Right,
whatever the
okay.
case may be. But as of right now, we're working with the state. They have come up with some language that will allow us to replace a mobile home for a mobile home, but you have to get special permission for that. So in an instance, I generally will not delve into that if we have, unless we're in danger of not meeting our goal of 11 or more homes, because it takes a whole lot of time, and DEO is, trust me when I tell you, they're not in the business of handing out time extensions like they used to be. So anything that's going to take an inordinate amount of time or approval, because it would have to come back before you, it would have to get approved, it would have to take a vote, then go back up to DEO, and then a change in your housing assistance plan, that can take 6-8 weeks. Doesn't seem like a whole lot of time, but it can be.
Well, I know that the housing assistance plan is good. I mean, it was reviewed the last time that we had a
Correct.
CDBG, so I know it's good. So what you're saying is if any changes that we want to make now for mobile homes or whatnot has to be incorporated in that.
Correct. It would have to be.
Okay. But
under
we don't
special
allow
request.
mobile homes. We would have to change our LDR for that if it's a brand-new mobile home. So, just saying.
Well, in most cases, like I said, in those cases, we would check those, what it's zoned or whatever the case may be, and if it ends up being a walkaway, that's something we'll, sit down with the homeowner. They'll get a denial letter saying this is exactly why, because it just won't fit with, the program as it stands.
Okay, I have a real hypothetical question here that probably doesn't apply to anything here, but that one house that we have sitting on Lake Avenue that is unoccupied, can we do something with that with any current recipients of funds? Or let's just say there's someone whose house is completely shot. Can we just relocate that individual to that home?
City owns that home?
I don't know right now. I think the bank owns it, or the family owns it. I think they're just waiting for something to happen. But,
If you have the proper permissions and it's legal, you can. But we can't move.
it's after the 5 years, so it should be,
Correct.
at this point, the lady died, so,
That's a good question. I think I misunderstood your question there a little bit. So you're saying a person who is eligible for the program and their home needs to be torn down, can we move them via CDBG into that? I don't think there's any regulatory barriers to that, but if that did occur, just to cover everybody, I would run that by the state to say, hey, we have a previously built CDBG home. It's in good condition. We've went out and inspected it. Everything is good. It's eligible for someone to move in. That will save us a whole lot of money and maybe allow us to, assist one additional person. I don't see the state turning that down.
okay.
But again, that would be something we would run by the state because it's just so out of the norm that you want to make sure you have it in writing from the state that it is allowable, because you don't want them to come back and say, hey, you shouldn't have done that. But I don't see why they would turn that down. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for them to do.
Wouldn't
so.
the family members have something to say about that, though?
They, for some reason, it ended up being owned by a bank.
Yeah, how did that happen?
And it's a CDBG home?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because she died during the first 5 years.
Well, because in foreclosure, technically, the bank was being very nice. Because I do remember that it was a big battle about this particular
Yeah.
home. I think the home was just about to go into foreclosure because, again, the original owner was in the hospital.
The nursing home.
And correct,
Yeah.
and I think the kids or whoever the nearest relatives were, again, they weren't from here and they weren't interested in the
They
home,
was trying
so
to
it just
sell.
kind of went into foreclosure. So technically, when the bank came to you and said, can you forgive your lien? Technically, in that foreclosure procedure, any other subordinate liens are generally wiped out. So for some reason, somebody at that bank doesn't know that. So it's sitting there and probably can't be sold because of the subordinate lien that we have, or they're just waiting for the 5 years to go up because it's a self-forgiving lien. But that's the only reason.
Huh?
The 5 years are up. aren't
Yeah.
But
That
then,
was
then the bank is
2011.
then
I
the bank
think.
is just sitting on it then, for whatever reason.
Or they've just completely forgotten.
Maybe
Okay.
maybe they think that the lien that we have is perpetual. Again, somebody just probably is not doing their due diligence there.
Okay, so that helps with that question. I had other ones. You talked about receiving other funds from other places. I remember from the last one, it said that you couldn't use SHIP funds if you had gotten them in the past, but you're saying as long as it's 5 years, or if we have a mutual agreement on an interlocal
Correct.
with the county, then you can.
Correct.
So I don't know that we have one or not, but,
You probably do not, because it's just that unusual. Again, I know the county SHIP liens. I think Hollins County. It's been a while since I've worked in Hollins County. I think their liens go on Perpetually?
Yeah, but you know what? They forgave a bunch several years
Did
ago.
they?
I mean, just a big
And they
list.
could do that in this case. It could be just as simple as a request, as saying, hey, you know, we have a person who had received your SIP funds 20 years ago. Obviously, the value for that has been, you know,
Yeah.
outlived. You know, can we request a waiver for that?
So when you get the applications, you'll know those things and you'll be able to
Correct.
vet those applications accordingly and then be able to categorize them and stuff. So if
Correct.
there
That's why
are
we get
issues like that.
that owners and encumbrance report.
Okay,
We check all the liens and all the DPLs and mortgages or notes that are tied with a particular property. So that's part of the vetting process.
all
One
right.
other question.
Go ahead.
A homeowner, if they do not I know you said that they must keep insurance during the construction or the rehab stage. If they don't have insurance now, would they be required to have it before?
That's a council decision. They, in the housing assistance plan, it requires them to have insurance for the duration of the deferred payment lien, so for 5 years.
Okay.
Through the grant, you can actually pay for the first year. That can be a part of their rehabilitation assistance.
Okay.
Now, what goes on after that, because they have to keep you listed as an additional insured or a, we'll say additional insured, I can't think of the other word.
Yeah.
So as soon as that lapses, you will get notified. Then that kind of puts you in a situation to where, okay, am I going to allow them to continue forward without insurance now that I know it officially?
Yeah.
Or am I going to recapture? Again, careful with those things, because if you set a precedent,
You got it.
because everything you do is public, and the word gets out, you could be again setting a precedent. But that is something that, if that does happen, we'd sit down with the city manager so he can bring it to you, and we would have a clear path of how we would address that.
Would that be in one of our contracts or something? How would we establish that?
It's in your deferred payment lien and your
Okay.
housing assistance plan.
Okay.
Okay, you had made some comment about the, section 7 on 7 of 17, that the income was going to be qualified by the city.
Well, when I say the city, because it's your grant.
Right, so it's
But
really you.
technically, it's Guardian, because
Okay.
we're an extension of you.
All right, I
it's
just wanted
I'm
to
always in the
confirm
habit
that
of saying
one.
the city, because I don't want to say Guardian, and then somebody in the audience thinks it's Guardian's grant, when technically it's the city grant.
Okay, and also on the advertising cycle, the last grant, we had 3 separate advertising, well, it was one big advertising at first, but you went in 3 separate chunks because of the funding, right? It was 3 separate construction bids.
Correct. That
Right.
is what they call an intent to bid.
Do you foresee doing it all at once because now there's less homes, or do you see it going in phases like you did the last time?
Believe it or not, everything just depends on the applicant pool.
Okay.
Everything depends on the round of applicants. If we get a whole host of applicants at that initial advertisement and everybody qualifies, I like to bid them out in large groups because it makes our prices a lot better and the contractors get a bit more competitive. But if we, in some places, only get 3 or 4 homeowners at a time, and to keep DEO off of my back and your backs, I will bid them out in smaller chunks. But I don't foresee that because we're nearing hurricane season. Everybody wants their house repaired and or replaced. So we're at an optimal time to probably get a lot of response to those advertisements.
If there's an empty lot and someone is homeless but lives, day to day somewhere in the city, could they apply for CDBG on that empty lot if that empty lot was donated to them?
If they own that lot,
So it would have to be donated to them in their name.
they would need to have owned it for at least a year.
Okay.
That's the precedent that DEO generally sets.
All right. That's a rule.
Yeah, because I would take that up to DEO, and then they would say some very bad things to me. So it's generally what I will, if it comes to that and you say that to me, I'll say, I will take it up to DEO at your request, but here's my experience with that in the past, and I've had some experience with that. Now, if they originally owned the lot and have had it for a year, and the house was demolished because it was, in a state of disrepair or something like that, and they just couldn't afford to build a new house back, then yes, I could build a house on that empty lot. But if the land is empty and say the city owns it or a family member owns it or somebody like that, and they donate it to a person who was not originally the owner of that land, then that's probably not going to fly at the state level.
And then of the balance of the money, since it's 125,000 set aside for admin and you only submitted for 90, the difference between that, can that be, you know, we had so many change orders the last time and one house actually didn't get done because the money had to go to a different house that
Correct.
went over. I guess it would be up to the contractor, but are we gonna have any kind of no overage for change orders or anything like that, where the contractor is held accountable so that we don't run out of money and people don't get their houses finished?
It will depend on what the change order is. The last home that you're talking about, it was kind of a behind-the-wall change order. And because the inspections that we have to complete are non-invasive, because if we break it, we buy it. And if we don't want to break anything during an inspection and that home is not qualified, and then, you know, we're kind of left holding the bag. If it's a behind-the-wall change order, then unfortunately there's not much we can do because legally the contractor just didn't know it was a change of conditions that was unforeseen. If it's a frivolous change order, something like, hey, you know, the homeowner requests cabinets, I'll just deny that up front. We're not going to get into cosmetic change orders and things like that.
I'm talking plumbing.
If it's something like that, what I generally will do now is I've changed up tactics a little bit now. Instead of saying, hey, contractor, you have a contract, you work on these things at your pace. When I have an inkling that there's something, that may be something behind the wall, I mandate that those things be taken care of first. That way, if there is something behind the wall, we can take off some of the other stuff for that particular homeowner and it won't affect another homeowner. So it's just,
So you cannot use any funding right now, because this particular home that has the plumbing issue, I believe they're still using their bathroom to use for water in their kitchen.
now
I'm just looking at someone in the audience, seeing if that's still true. No,
I don't
okay,
think
got
that's
fixed.
true because I paid for money out
I
of
know
my
you
pocket.
paid, I know you
to have
paid
it snagged.
$5,000. I know
No, that
you
was a
paid
different
your
one.
own money.
This was
Okay.
something else.
Yeah, but I know you're itching for that.
Yeah.
But no one, but okay, there was one particular house that didn't get stuccoed and didn't get paint.
Correct.
Its money went someplace else.
Correct.
Can that one apply, you're saying it won't go for cosmetic then? Can
If
it
the only
finish-
thing that's wrong with that house is cosmetic, it will not get serviced.
Okay,
Now, if for whatever reason that plumbing has reverted back to
disrepair?
disrepair, then I can go in and say, hey, we have this, and we also have this cosmetic item, and then we can address it that way. But just cosmetic alone, without any HQS or code items, that would be considered, you know, waste and abuse of the funds there.
Okay.
I'm just gonna ask one more question, then I'm gonna be finished. To prevent us from the last time we did this grant, there was one house, and I can't remember the address, but I do remember the incident. It was built from ground up, and it was mildew into the house. And it wasn't discovered until later on. And I don't know what happened to the house,
He paid for it.
but
That's the house that
Was it-
he paid for out of his own pocket.
it was repaired?
Yes, ma'am, it was taken care of. It was taken care of.
You paid for it out your own pocket?
Every now and again, you have to do what's right. It was
Thank
just,
you.
it wasn't discovered until right after the warranty was up.
Yeah, the warranty, I believe, was 6 months.
It was a year.
Yeah.
A year, I
It was
don't
a
know,
year.
but anyway, it had been discovered, there was no, the contractor, there was a mess of miscommunication and
Correct.
all. Anyway, you took care of it, so thank you, and
Yeah,
I'm
no
sure
problem.
that,
Family drove, I mean, they really hammered on me, and I didn't know who to contact.
and
them.
me,
Yeah.
everyone that would listen, and you heard it, you
I
got all the
did.
calls.
I went out to the house a few times, and the contractor, again, I mean, I can't condemn him because the warranty was up, but sometimes, like I said, you just got to do what's right.
Antonio, would it be prudent that within the year of the, you know, the period of, what's it called again? Oh my God.
The warranty period?
The warranty period, would it help to have you go in there and do an inspection prior to the year so that if there are any issues, you can address them and bring them to the attention of the contractor?
Oh, yeah, we can
Because
do
you
that.
might be seeing something
do
that the
that.
homeowner won't. Would that be something that you all could?
That's actually a pretty good idea. I never thought of it until you just mentioned it. It probably is a fairly good idea to do that. Probably is a fairly good idea to do that.
So can you put that in your schedule?
I will do that. I will do that.
Thank you, Antonio.
No problem.
I'm finished with you.
We have any other questions for Antonio?
Nope.
That
Oh,
seems-
wait. When does the advertising begin?
That's a Corbett question. He's on vacation. What will happen is I will have an email in the county manager's inbox in the morning with that answer. and then he can get that out to everybody.
And the radio guy is right there, Mr. Foster. He'd probably like to know that as well, so that he could help with the advertisement. So you're talking about putting it in the newspaper, going to the church's flyers. I know that last time you guys walked around and handed out
Yes.
stuff. You know, so anytime that we have an opportunity to let that out, we can put flyers up at City Hall when people pay their water bill. We can put it on the water bills themselves and just advertise it on that. That way we get as many people applying, and like you said, probably less than 7 homes will end up with any kind of funding.
It will be, like I said, we have to do 11, so we have to do that no matter what, so I have to make that budget stretch to that. But like I said, I don't foresee with the current market in replacing more than 2 homes, and then the other 9 homes will be some form of rehab, major to moderate, maybe even minor. I love those minors because it helps us keep our average. Again, getting into the weeds, you have to have an average to the state of $63,300. If you exceed that, then you're not in compliance. So
How many other housing grants are you working on right now?
about,
If you have to look up and think about it, then that means you've got a lot.
I got a few. I have a few.
Okay.
I have a few.
But the availability of your services will be there within, what, 24 hours if
Yes,
someone gives a call?
Always. I'm always,
Okay.
I live in my car, so I'm not that far away.
Got it.
That's,
Do you need a grant?
I do. Anything else? Thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
Sorry to take up so much time.
Very good.
Thank you.
Wasn't your fault.
It was Maria.
Well, we all
And
learned
you.
something.
Let's not forget Gray. Anyway, attorney updates. Item number 6, charter revision, amend budget by ordinance or resolution.
You have a separate handout. You have a separate handout for this. The change to this that's in this is at 2.03, as I recall. Hold on a second, pull that.
Page 4.
5.03. 5.03, Jerry.
Yeah, I know, it's, there's 2 changes here.
Okay.
The first one's at 2.03. This came from a council member. The request was that we change this monthly salary to compensation so that it recognizes that there can be other forms of compensation besides the salary. And so it makes sense to me. The other change that is in this, since you've seen the last one, is at 5.03. The request was change ordinance to resolution. I'm suggesting that we change it to ordinance or resolution as provided by the code. And the reason for that is that leaves you the flexibility of doing it either way. Because I did hear from a commissioner that felt like it should be done, or a council person that felt like it needed to be done by ordinance. But then, you know, I think it also makes sense if a council might want it done by resolution. So this way it leaves you the option of doing it either way. You just change the code as opposed to having to change the charter. So that would change that to, the first sentence is the council shall adopt an annual budget for the city by ordinance or resolution as provided by the city code before October 1st of each year. And then at the bottom, or the next sentence will be an ordinance or resolution adopting an annual budget, so on. That would be the change that I would suggest. You can either, if you wish to approve one or both of these, you can move to either.
I'd like to address that.
Okay.
I just think that if it's by ordinance, it requires 2 readings, which means it's 2 public hearings, which makes it more transparent to the public. If it's just a resolution, it only goes once, which means that there's not a lot of information out for the public unless you're actually really interested in it. But to me, the ordinance just really puts it out there that we are wanting the public input, and there's a whole month between, or actually, how many days between the ordinance readings, between first and
10 da-
second?
10 days.
10 days. So at least there's 10 days to modify, find out, question, anything that a public person would want to know and be able to address at the council meeting. I just think it's more transparent to do it with 2.
David, do you see any issue with that from an administrative standpoint?
Mr. Helms actually asked this to be put on because he thought it would make the process a bit easier for us to deal with.
Yeah, but it's easier for the staff. It's an administrative thing. It's a bureaucratic thing to do it twice, but for the transparency and public purview, I think that 2 meetings makes it to where there's just that much more oversight from the public as well. I mean, that's how my take on it. It's up to the council to decide what they want to do, but I would like to see it by ordinance. It just makes it 10 more days. That's all it is 10 more days.
Well, if you do it in the manner I suggested, you could do it either way. You just establish it in your code. Yeah, in other
Ordinance
words,
or
you-
resolution.
Right. And you would just pass an ordinance in your code that says that we choose to do it by ordinance. And then that leaves the option for future councils to say, well, we do it by resolution. And, but if you don't change it at all, it'll stay as ordinance.
Okay.
I mean, I'm all about bureaucratic streamlining, but at the same time, when it comes to our $19 million budget, I think that we should let the public know.
Does anybody else have any comments?
I'm just trying to think of a reason why we'd want to do a resolution and just get it over with. If we lowered the budget 20%, then it's like, why bother to put the vote out? But I don't think that's probably ever going to happen. So I agree with.
Well, I
Okay,
think
let
the,
me interject this.
Okay.
This wasn't meant to be for the whole budget process. This was for like budget amendments and stuff where we come to you where we need to move some money from one fund to another.
Okay, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
that in the process of approving the budget, when you approve the budget, of course, you spend a lot of time,
Yeah,
months,
that's
going
by
over the
ordinance.
budget. So there's nothing fast about that, but the resolution would be helpful
For
with
budget
regard
amendments.
to budget amendments.
Yes.
I see
But
that.
it doesn't say budget amendments, it says annual budget.
Well, that, it says budget adoption. We could put a line in at the end, or we could make it budget adoption or amendment, and then put a line at the end saying amendments of the budget can be done by resolution.
Yeah, because I mean, I didn't interpret
Hold on.
this as an amendment at all.
Although I think it really goes contrary to, I guess you really can't do that. If you pass your budget by ordinance, you have to do it by ordinance. If you pass it by resolution, you can do it by resolution or ordinance.
Yeah, because amendments we do by resolution all the time.
Right.
Yeah, but you
Like
shouldn't.
So what you're saying is that the amendments have to be in here
Well, you can't.
with a choice of resolution or ordinance, but that the annual budget should be by ordinance. Those are 2 separate things.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if you do your annual budget by ordinance, then amendments have to be done by ordinance.
Gotcha.
Because you can't amend it, you can't amend an ordinance with a resolution.
So what you're saying is we've been doing it wrong all along.
Well, I was trying not to say that, but.
Well, that's okay.
Then say it if that's what's happening.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the budget, whenever we're approving our annual budget, there is by no stretch of the imagination could you think that it's quick.
No,
I mean, we
but
typically
that's-
have 1 or 2 workshops.
Yeah, but that's what this was saying, annual budget by
Right.
ordinance.
But
So
we now know that would also encompass all of the
Okay,
amendments.
now we do.
And in the amendments, we probably do a dozen, 2 dozen as the year goes on.
I think we have
One a
one
month.
tonight.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to suggest, and I certainly understand what you're saying, nobody wants to sneak one in on the public, but your budget process before you do the ordinance or resolution is months long. You go through it and you have a number of meetings. I mean, how many you normally have before you pass a budget? 6 or 7 budget meetings?
I would say at least 5, yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, it's not like you don't do that the first meeting. You talk about what's going to be in the resolution for months beforehand, and then you pass the resolution. So it's not like we're sneaking anything in on the public.
Okay, so between now and this charter passing, if we change the language to what you're suggesting, we should be having all of our budget amendments done through ordinance.
That's right.
Okay, so the one tonight is by resolution, that's in the packet, no? Is it an ordinance? Okay.
We had that conversation.
We did, didn't we? Okay. Never mind.
Okay,
Okay.
so what are we settling on then? What's the final settlement?
If you wish, my suggestion to resolve this and leave it open is that 5.03 read, the council shall adopt an annual budget for the city by ordinance or resolution as provided by the city code before October 1st, so on and so forth. And then the second line say, an ordinance or resolution adopting the annual budget, so on and so forth. That way it gives you the option, you just put it in your code, this is the way we're going to do it. Someday you can change it back to ordinance if you wish, back to resolution. Whereas changing the charter requires referendum, it's very costly to do changes to the charter.
Right.
So this leaves you, in your own, to your own possibilities as to what you want to do. But as I said, I think that it's a good suggestion by staff because it is easier to do amendments, but, and I don't think I'll be slipping anything over. I know we talked about that, but I didn't think about this earlier, so I apologize. But, you guys do this for months, so it wouldn't be slipping anything in on them because you
Yeah.
don't pass this till the end.
Well, as long as the amendment part of it, I guess, is included somewhere, because that was not in here, and that's where I got confused. It just said
No, the
budget.
statute says that if you want to amend.
Well, I
your-
didn't read the
your budget-
statute.
Yeah, no, but I'm just, we say, it doesn't have to be in your charter.
Okay.
That is the way that you amend an ordinance, is by ordinance.
Okay,
But if you have a resolution, you can amend a resolution by resolution.
okay.
Does anyone wish to make a motion to that effect?
So you can make a motion to approve both changes, or one change, or neither change.
I'll make a motion to approve both changes to our charter that, as previously described by our city attorney.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock.
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7, we have the selection of the CRA chair and vice chair.
Okay, as I was doing my research regarding your independent CRA, I came upon an opinion of the Attorney General's office. Basically said, yeah, it's nice that you all use the mayor as the chair of your CRA, but you really, what you're supposed to do is actually choose. You can't just assume that the mayor is going to be the CRA chair. That's generally how, defaults, how you would do it anyway. But, and I'm not suggesting a change or anything. I just want to make sure it's official, and officially, as you all sitting as the CRA, this board, the city council, has to choose the chair and vice chair of the CRA.
That was my question, because my thought was, and when I first read this, I thought you was talking about picking a person outside of this council,
No.
when we had not even, okay, I got you, you answered me.
Just talking
Well-
about the board that the
I
council
got you.
serves as the
I
CRA.
got you.
So what you could,
I have no problem with the way it's set up right now, and if you need a motion for that, then I'll
I
make a
do.
motion that we make Mayor Anderson the chair of the CRA board and Deputy Mayor Bernard the
Vice
co-chair,
Vice chair.
vice
Vice
chair
chair.
of the CRA board.
Do we have a
Raise.
second?
Make
I
it
second
easy.
it, go ahead.
We have a motion and a second. Questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock.
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Does that come with another business card?
I just didn't know if I needed to abstain.
No.
I just wanted to make a point on that as well. That goes by also within what I was telling you about the slavish adherence to the statute that the state has with regard to the CRA, and why we ended up having to get an opinion on that, and I don't think it's going to come out well. I did want to mention that, you can add 2 outside people that are not commissioners to this board for the purposes when you sit as a CRA. So it'd be you plus 2, okay?
So you can add? or
You can add.
Okay.
So you could pick 2 citizens to sit with you, and even one of those citizens can be a chair or vice chair if you want to do that.
Hmm.
So I just throw that.
That until we have an autonomous board, if we can have
That's
an
right.
autonomous board.
And I'd simply, this is the adherence that they do. Yeah, that is the chair of your city council, but we said, the statute says that you have to select, the chair. And so, at any rate, it's just kind of, all right.
All right, item number 8 is going to be removed by request of city administration.
Could I
Moving on.
have just one question on that?
Go ahead.
Is the CEI paid for out of the grant? 100%.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah, not going to happen, though.
I'm sorry?
It's not going to happen, though, right? It's going to exceed, we're going to exceed that.
I mean, it says 20,000,
Not even close.
so it's not 20,000?
We're going to have to RFQ it.
How much is it gonna be?
We don't know yet, but
Don't know yet.
the quote we got was high.
Okay.
Is
So,
it going to go out for a bid?
We're going to bid it out rather than go with one of our CCNA because we feel like we might get a better price, you
Yeah, I
know,
do too.
ultimately.
Yeah, okay.
And so the design and engineering is at $104,500. That's the design and engineering. How much of that right now has been done by Polston Engineering or spent?
I think we're around 75% right now.
And they're not done, right?
They're not done. It's getting close.
Are they going to end up spending all 104 of that? Because I mean, I haven't seen a contract from Polston. Did they ever submit a contract or an agreement?
Not yet.
Gee.
But let me point out that when we go out to RFQ under CCNA, we're not actually bidding competitively the prices and so on. We're just bidding for qualifications, and then we have to negotiate a contract. And, but it gives you more options anyway. So, anyway.
Will we see an agreement from Polston?
Yes.
We discussed that. Yes.
We're this far along in that situation,
Yes.
and all of the controversy that surrounded that, and now we still don't have a contract from Polson on what this is gonna cost us?
Not the second part. We did the first part because you approved the first part that had already been expended, but there's a lot more that needs to be
But
expended.
doesn't the grant require that? Doesn't the
The
grant?
grant requires that we get the plans done by a date certain, September 1st or something, was that? No, what is that, Manuel?
It has to start by September
30th.
1st or 30th.
30th. Yes.
Start the plans?
Start construction.
No, construction starts 2 years.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So the
Yes.
project has to get started by September 30th.
Okay. So at any rate, there is a short fuse on this, and I would just simply say, yeah, we don't want to spend the money, but we've already spent probably more than half of it already. And then if you decide, you know, and you may decide when you find out how much everything's going to cost, that you don't want to do the project, and I'm not saying you will or you won't, I'm just saying that may be a possibility, that the design for the lines will still be valid for a number of years. And you will be running a line someday, and just this way. So the only thing that'll be changed, you know, that might have to change if somebody puts in more lines in the right of way or something like that. And we have to work around it somehow. But, you know, overall, the design will still be good for a period of time.
Where did the $20,000 figure come from? That was in my packet. I have a $20,000 figure.
That was something that Ronnie had thrown out there. He didn't think it would exceed that, but it did.
I can't hear you, David, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. That was something that our infrastructure director put in there because that's what he was expecting, that it was going to be a percentage of the total
Is he
grant.
close on that?
No. No. There was more to
Wishful
this than what we realized. This
Well,
is,
yeah,
I really didn't want to get into all this right now. That's why I had
Yeah.
it pulled.
Right.
Because ultimately, what it is we don't know until we select another engineer. If we do select another, we may select Cool and Cobb as the engineer on this, but we don't know. It's up to you. But ultimately, until we negotiate a contract with somebody, what that price is going to be, and but I don't, you know, it seemed like it'd be difficult to afford what we know of right now.
And just to be clear, are we going to go to RFQ or RFP for
RFQ.
but it's not going to be pulled out of the library of engineers. This is a
No.
true bid.
I
Okay.
suggested that we, you know, should look at the possibility. We have 2 local engineers
Yeah.
at fine firms, do a good job and so on. But you may need a large, you know, national/statewide firm that, you know, is capable of bringing more services to bear and having a broader capability services-wise, where you're not using a principal engineer to do things like inspections.
Wouldn't it be to our advantage to do that?
I think so.
We are doing it.
To
what we're
get a
doing.
big national firm to come in.
Yeah, and I think that would be helpful, you know, just to have somebody like that available for those types of projects that require a lot of that big engineering firm type stuff. I'm not saying anything against the engineering firms you have, which do an excellent job, but this is, you know.
I'm just saying, okay, all right.
All right.
Sorry.
The longest discussed pulled item on the list. Item number 9, city attorney employment agreement.
Okay, I'll leave you all to discuss that.
All right, we have before us an agreement of our city attorney.
And I just
It-
want to make, there's a page 2 and 4 are missing.
I did send you all the full agreement when I sent it to the staff. And, so, hopefully you've all looked at the full agreement that I sent you.
It's fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
It's as I recall, and I have not done it word for word, but it's what I use, and what I used before, primarily as we had when I was here before.
Right. We have any questions?
I have one question,
Go
just
ahead.
on the last paragraph of the first page, actually the second sentence. I mean, how many portions are we talking about splitting this with?
Can you rephrase that or repeat that? I didn't hear you.
Okay, on the second sentence of the last paragraph of the first page,
Oh,
where it says the city additionally agrees to pay a portion.
Right.
The last
Well, I mean, yours is the largest, it goes by population, so, but I have Zolfo Springs, Bowling Green, and San Antonio. Bowling Green is roughly 33,000, something like that, about 33,000. Zolfo Springs, roughly 2,000. San Antonio is roughly 800, 900 citizens. So,
so he prorates his expenses based off
Yeah.
of the population.
Or like,
You don't have any more cities that you could narrow that number down?
I wish I did, but I don't know.
are any of those fees split with also your company?
Now, the Medicare, with regard to that I take a portion out of that for any private work I do as well, right off the top. In other words, I don't allocate anything having to do with private clients that I represent.
Okay,
But my company, I'm not a member or employee of Saxon Gilmore. Our two firms are like, I'm of counsel to that firm. So it's sort of like my firm is partners with that firm.
I got you.
And it keeps me from having to have a secretary and paralegals and things like
Yeah.
that.
Jerry, do we have the ability that if let's just say there's a real estate transaction, that instead of we using your other firm that you deal with, could we select someone locally?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Would we have to go to RFP for someone like that, or can we just select based off of whatever we may have? Because when you make the recommendation, we typically don't go to any kind of procurement.
Well, if it's a real estate closing type thing, I mean, I would be shocked if it wasn't well below the city manager's purchasing authority,
Okay.
and
I just don't know what their rates are. They're a larger city, or rather, they're a larger firm. I just don't know if they're competitive
Well,
with our local fees.
as I mentioned here, they'll generally use the rate that I have for you.
Okay.
Even though they're not real happy about it. But, if it turns out that there's somebody that can't use that because of whatever reason, they don't want to use it, partners, sometimes don't. I've left you the option here of selecting, somebody else, because
Okay.
that obviously would be unfair. I'm quoting it, but I will tell you that, you're 175, you're not going to find, it's going to be more like 250 to 300. And a lot of attorneys now in Tampa are close to $400 an hour.
I have a question. From what we've already paid to you, what's the average that we've already paid at this point?
Over
to
what
this-
period of time?
Since he started back here in November. I think you started in November.
Well,
I
I don't,
actually sent that to you. I emailed that to you. It was just right around 50,000.
Around about 50,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
yeah,
And
that sounds about right.
About 10,000 less than what your full-time attorney was.
And we've
at
only
that
had
point.
you for a few months.
Well,
6
and
months,
actually,
6
that's the
months.
reason it's so high, is
Yeah.
because you had a lot of things to do
Yeah,
right
I
off the bat.
understand that.
And as I've said to several people, I mean, my feeling is that you're more like a monthly 5,000 as to
That
the
was
city
my
attorney.
next question.
I think that's where I'd like to see you.
At-
But if I'm given things like a charter to do and things like that, obviously those are bigger items that.
I understand that.
go beyond. And it doesn't cover things like litigation, doesn't cover your labor counsel, those are all additional costs, which
Yeah.
I think you did as well through your previous attorney, so.
So
in-house
just
attorney.
about 5,000 a month plus any extras.
Right. That's what I would put you at, just based on my
Yeah,
experience.
and if I recall, you are about 1.5% of our total budget,
Wow.
because that's what the other one was. So it's right around the same. Those were calculations that were brought on by the previous city manager. So, that's a small price to pay for the 28 years of experience. So I make a motion that we approve this contract for our city attorney.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second, please.
We have a motion and a second. Is
I
there
have one
any?
other question.
Go ahead.
Did anybody else look at this contract besides us up here and the city manager?
I have no way of answering that.
that you
All-
know of?
all you can
a
answer is for
labor-
yourself.
Labor attorney? Did he, I'm just curious, just my curiosity.
No, this is here.
This is it, okay.
Let me ask Jerry a question while you're on that. Wasn't this already, is this the same exact contract you had before, other than just some tweaking of numbers?
I can't say it's exact, but it was not my intent to make changes that I didn't already make for all my other clients. So this
Okay.
is what I do for my other 3 cities. And if it's a change to what you had before, it's not a substantial change. It's certainly not a change as to the hourly rates for my regular time. And of course, there's a developer time, but you can bill those people back. For my time, that's a higher rate, still not my full rate, but it's a higher rate.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray,
No,
Councilmember Spurlock,
Absolutely, yes.
Councilmember Sutherland,
Yes?
Deputy Mayor Bernard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 10, Classic Caladiums. Jerry's you as well.
Sure. City manager sent me a correspondence that he received from Classic Caladiums inquiring as to whether they could sign a bank document, which was landlord's consent and waiver of lien. I reviewed that, and I reviewed it comparing the lease. And as I laid out in my memorandum, which I sent to Classic Caladiums. I don't know if they've got somebody here. All right, good.
My name is
Then,
Jimmy Lipscomb,
yeah,
by the way.
This is not something I can say is okay. I can't, city manager can't say it's okay. It's up to you, because in my opinion, you'd have to change your existing lease. You'd have to modify the lease in order to do so. I don't know if it was the intent to allow this or not in the existing lease, because it's not perfectly put together. That's where we stand right now, because as it stands right now, one of the prohibitions in your lease is, which causes a default to the tenancy, is somebody putting their property up, them putting their property up as part of the mortgage lien. And, which is kind of contrary to another provision in there, which says that you can do that. But that also requires that, as I mentioned in my memorandum, it's also required in this that the lender take over the leasehold. Now, was it the intent that we would waive it if they take over the leasehold? And, which would make you whole, because you'd still receive rent if they defaulted on their mortgage and they defaulted on their rent. You would have somebody, the mortgage company would then take over and pay the rent. But here, what the lender is saying is, you agree to the fact that we can go in, remove all the equipment from the building, and be gone. And all we do is we pay you a daily rent, which is an amortization of the monthly rent, and then we're done. The problem with that is, if you did that, you would have absolutely no recourse if you did not get paid the rent in case of a foreclosure.
Okay. Sir?
So first of all, I'm not an attorney, so.
Name and address, please.
My name is James Lipscomb, Jimmy. I'm administrative VP at Classic Caladiums.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do, and then we'll have the attorney respond.
So first of all, thank you for the time. We've had one of our best years ever. We intend to continue to have great years. So hopefully this is a moot point going forward. From what I can see and what we discussed internally, one thing that maybe Attorney Burr doesn't have or didn't have is a memorandum of lease from February of 2008.
Yeah, I looked at that.
Okay.
So
And
that's actually worse for you.
this makes it worse.
Yeah.
So what we believe the intention of the consent and waiver of lien to be is access to the property if default occurs, to get back property. This is not a mortgage on the property. It's a line of credit that we use to
Right.
front pay expenses until people have paid us.
Well, let me just point out that it'd be unlawful, even unconstitutional, for somebody to mortgage our property.
Obviously.
Okay, so that's prohibited in the lease, and it's clear. But the property issue is generally how a landlord is able to secure full payment for the term of the lease for its rent. So we're letting you use the building, you've made a lot of changes, and that's, we can take the equipment and sell it then and get some money back for, to pay for the lost rent. But it may be, and it does happen sometimes, where, we let somebody else, use that as security for operating expenses or whatever. And, but I don't know if that was the intent here, because it's just not clear. Because like I said, there's contradictory, as I mentioned in my memorandum, there's contradictory terms.
It's very confusing.
Well,
You
shouldn't we have the bank redraft this or something? I mean, it just seems like you're also suggesting that we get the commercial lease attorney to look at it. That's expense on our end to interpret what they're requesting. Why are we paying to get this done ourselves?
Well, I just simply say that, if we end up in a situation where we're at loggerheads as to resolution, but I think it's not necessary at this point to get them involved. I mean, if their attorney wants to do something, absolutely, not a problem. I'd be happy to talk to them about it and explain to them why I have a problem. If you wanted to let them do that, then it'd be fairly easy for me to make an addendum up clarifying that issue. If you wanted them to be able to use their equipment as security for their loan to somebody else.
And where
But just
would that
put-
leave us?
What is
Nothing.
his assets? What are his
Yeah.
assets?
A lot of equipment they use in their process.
But
I
it's
said.
mobile. It'd be moved out of there before he ever come to that point.
But that
It
would-
be on that property.
That would be a violation of the lease at the very
Well, you
least, and
can-
it could be theft. So I'm gonna,
Well, I mean, I'm going under. I'm gonna move my forklift out of here, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna get this out of here.
people have done that before, clear, without mistake, but, you can't stop somebody from doing something like that. All you can do is bring action afterwards.
In our current contract, I know that you guys have made improvements and that it's been deducted from the taxes over years every time you've made improvements. You're all done with all that, right?
I think we put in over $1 million worth
Yeah.
of improvements.
Okay, so, I
Nothing
mean,
that major is happening anymore, but we are continuing to build equipment inside to better serve our purpose. For
right. And you
rating
guys have been
selling.
good business neighbors, and I know that we've had lots of concessions back and forth. And I mean, I would like to see something that's fair. I'd like for them to remain there and continue to do business, but also to protect ourselves. So what's the best remedy for us to do something? Now, you're saying to write a letter or talk to their attorney or talk to the bank,
Well,
or?
there is no remedy other than to let them do, if you want to fix the situation, if they need the money, if they need the mortgage, which I guess makes me a little nervous already, but if they need the mortgage in order to, proceed ahead, which apparently that's what they've gone out for, is to renew a mortgage, existing mortgage, which may be a line of credit for all I know.
Why don't you
That's
buy
what
the
he said.
building?
Good question. We'd love to. Hopefully we can be profitable and.
I mean, the money that you put into it would have bought the building already.
I can't answer that question.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a whole different issue.
Just wondering.
Yep.
All right, well, what I'm saying is, there aren't a lot of options available to you with regard to your own rent. Now, you would be giving up security as to your rent. If you're okay with that, that just simply means you would get, the bank would come in and reclaim all the equipment, probably leave behind stuff they don't want that you'd have to clear out, which is how this typically goes. They don't remove everything, they just remove what they want. And then you could rent it out to somebody else, assuming that building fit the needs of somebody else. It may-
Couldn't we simply, if they were willing, restructure the lease to something that better serves both parties?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been comfortable. I was asked to look at this in 2011 or 12,
Right.
and I told you at the time I wasn't happy with his lease.
Right.
And it came up again when they wanted to renew, and it was equally bad then. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, a new lease would probably accommodate the whole thing, but you would still have to make a decision if you were to allow them to get the mortgage, which would mean that you would have no security.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you can't rent property out again. It's
Right.
just if you don't rent it out for 2 or 3 years, that's 2 or 3 years of lost rent.
But what security do you have on the other hangars that are out there in other buildings?
Whatever you can get for the equipment, which may not be a huge amount.
So you're telling me at some of the other rental places, like for the large hangar, like that I believe Ag Flying Services is in, what recourse do we have in the agreement like that?
It's different because that involves airplanes, and the FAA has restrictions on how you can repo things and how you can sell the repos and things like that, which they're dealing with somebody at Saxon Gilmore about right now. And because it's a complex area.
Got it.
In a perfect world, what exactly do you want to walk away with tonight?
We survived Hurricane Irma. Did not use a line of credit last year due to not enough bulbs to sell. I mean, that's what we're in the business for. We lost about 35% of our crop. Some guys in Lake Placid was even worse. So we survived a horrible year and were able to make enough sales to cover that difference, and our intention is to continue to do that.
How did you do
So-
between 2008 and 2010?
How do we do? I wasn't there. I've been there for 2 years, so I can't.
Because that's when plants took a dive as
Yeah,
well as
our
along
sales
with property.
do- do typically go up and down. The market is changing. We've had some dealings with Proven Winners. I don't know if anybody knows the white pot that's in most of the big box stores. We're doing some exclusives with them to further our product. So our intention is to never leave this place. It's perfect. It's huge. There's not very many areas as big or warehouses as big, and we may run out of space. We may need more.
Well, so as I see it, you
Perfect.
really have two options here as a council. You can either have me redo the lease and build into it the opportunity for them to do the use the property as a collateral for a loan. I'm saying the property, it's the equipment property, not the real property. And then or not approve it and go from there. The way the lease is, I don't see any option really.
I don't want something to come back and bite us 10 years from now. I would prefer that we have a little bit more of a, hold on what you're saying and drafting something that kind of incorporates some safety for us. But I also want their city attorney to be involved with it not their city, their attorney to be involved to the extent that we're not, taking all the brunt of the cost of attorney review. They should be able to draft something. If you tell them what you want, they should be able to draft it for you without you spending 8 hours on
Well,
it.
first question is, are they even open to changing the lease in any way?
Yeah.
We would have to speak with
Right.
our own attorney.
Right,
to make
exactly. That's the first and foremost question. And then if you are open to that, then you can begin the conversation between the attorneys to see if you can work out a deal that lets everybody get what they need.
Why don't you have your attorney contact me so we can discuss it?
Okay.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 11, update on Nucor agreement.
All right, so we met with Nucor again, and we're moving along and so on. But I guess the sticking point we have right now is that we have not received the contract back, the draft. Which and they're going to have some changes, and I'll probably have changes to their changes, and things like that. So we're moving along, but that's a sticking point that we have right now. As far as the line. Reviewing the grant is very specific, and as I recall, it's even in bold, that you are not to use this money to provide a line for a customer and a single customer. So, which point that you were making, well, that the other side of that is the way the design was coming was it was showing a line coming in from 27, then going up to the county line. Well, I wouldn't be able to explain why that line was going up to the county line other than to serve one customer. Instead, what we really need is to stop it before it goes north and install a lift station where people can connect then their subdivisions to our lift station, and we can provide service to that area, which was the intent of the grant. And we discussed it with Nucor. They didn't seem to have a problem with it. I really just don't know that we have much option, really, because I think it's going to be foolhardy. Now, you can wait to do the lift station because they're putting in their own lift station. They're going to put it into a force main. But aside from that, I mean, that's where we stand right now. The design is being modified to stop that northern section of pipes going up to their.
They've actually been very receptive to this. In fact, Ronnie Jones and I are meeting them on site tomorrow morning at 9 to actually look at what may be required for them to come down to the Sun Pure Road instead of going north on Lemon with it.
So as to the lift station, it may not meet the budget, for this. If you decide to do it, I mean, you don't have to do the lift station right now, but you can do it in the future. If you do decide to do it, the one thing that you can do is you can receive money back from people that connect to it, just like you do with capacity fees at a plant. Those are called main extension fees, because you've extended the main to provide service to an area.
We expect that most of those groves right there to the south of where our line will probably be future residents.
In fact, I would suggest that for that whole area, including Nucor, that anything that's above the grant, that everybody share by hydraulic shares the cost of that, what your overruns are going to be, not what they might be, but what your overruns are going to be for those two lines. And Nucor pay it, and all those grove areas pay for it, and so on, as part of that main extension fee. And you receive money back over time. Obviously, you don't make a profit because you're not in the profit business, but we do need to get paid back. Otherwise, it's unfair to the taxpayers who will have to pick up the tab.
Jerry, are you looking for consensus from us in regards to putting that lift station at the beginning of the road versus all the way to the top where they are? Is that what you're
Yes.
asking?
Yeah,
No,
that's
they're going to have a lift station anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
But we're going to need one for everyone else eventually too.
Later, yes.
Which is the goal. So, yeah, I totally agree with you there.
I don't
Yeah.
think it would be fair to expect them to pay for the second lift station, though.
Right.
No.
And I got to tell you, as a utility person now, not speaking as an attorney, you do not want a hodgepodge of small lift stations pumping into that force main. You would prefer to have one that serves a broader area, and then maybe some other lift stations pump into those other service areas leading to that master lift station, which would probably be a tripart station with 3 pumps in it, and so on.
Don't we have the old Sunpure plant that's wishing to connect as well?
Mm-hmm. Supposedly, the plastics company that's buying it or something, or
Right.
that's another building. There's the office building that's on Highway 27, and there's the one that's further in eastward.
Right.
The plant is the one, the old Sunpure plant is the one that the plastics company has, but I have no correspondence from them yet.
Okay. Supposedly, they were just waiting on water to be able to do their operation, but obviously someone needs to reach out to them and see what are they planning on doing and what kind of capacity, because that would tell us a whole lot more about sizing the lift station and whatnot, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think the engineers can give us a pretty good view of what that area is going to be able to handle. And it has to do with the hydraulics of that area, which is another thing that I really think we need to bring up. I got an email from Ronnie saying that the previous quotes and so on did not include the hydraulic analysis of those pipes up there in that area. So will the sizing of those pipes be sufficient to handle that whole area? I don't know. The other part was there's no fire hydrants on the water main, and we're required to be every 500 feet. Now, that's required within your land development code, or your master, not your land development code, but your master plan, but it's the comprehensive plan. Generally, that's their minimum requirements in the comprehensive plan.
Is that inside the city, or was there
Well,
a distinction between inside and outside?
That's something we were discussing a while ago.
But I would imagine the county has a very similar comp plan. So you may have to, look at their minimum standards for utilities as well, because we're not going to not be in their jurisdiction as to what we do, because we have extra jurisdiction outside the city limits under Chapter 180. But when it comes down to the requirement as to how many fire hydrants we have, I don't want to argue with them about that. So. But that's once again, that's going to be part of the cost we'll be able to get back, as people connect.
Right. Well, I guess the main question is we have to find out what is it going to cost first. We need to find out who all wants to connect. But as far as not running the line all the way to Nucor specifically, as being a single customer, I thought that was already well established that that wasn't going to happen.
Well, that's not the plans that I looked at. The plans I looked at went all the way to the county line, and I said, I don't know how we can justify that to
Right.
DEO.
You're talking about stopping on the, what is it,
Sunpure.
Sunpure Road?
Mhm.
Sunpure
Just
Road,
past the
right.
railroad track.
Right.
And then we'll just have to acquire property in that area. We can obviously extend the line somewhere where we can acquire property for a reasonable price. And then on that property, we'll put the lift station, and of course, we'll get the price of the property back as part of that extension fee.
Well,
Wouldn't it make more sense to run it on up to the county line? Because look, I mean, this is just my opinion. David's talking about houses coming out there, building houses at a steel mill. We'd be better suited to run that on to the county and that develop an industrial park out there by Nucor and by the plastic company, because there's about roughly 100 acres right there it's not going to be suited for housing, and all the trucking that's going to come in and the rail that's going to be in and all that. Wouldn't we be better suited if we run the line on up to the county line?
Well, then we're serving one customer, and we're
That's
not, then we're serving one
Well,
customer.
how many we serving stopping?
But
in
we're
that
not
deal?
supposed to do that by the scope of the grant.
The grant, yeah.
Yeah.
And, quite frankly, as I understand it, the projections for the Grove area is actually pretty high, as far as future possibility.
Be
But if we
15.
end up in another 2008 to 2012 scenario, who knows?
Yeah.
We had no growth at that point,
So there'll
so.
be a motel and a restaurant and 2 housing projects? Yeah, right.
Well, it
So-
might happen in 20 years
It may.
or 25.
I can't deny that.
So
And
what do
we'll be
you,
able to come back and say, we really like that.
so what do you need
They're all
from
gonna
us
be here,
tonight?
right?
We're going to
Jerry?
name the lift station the Stanley Spurlock lift station.
Oh.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
There's way too many jokes there, I'm sorry.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
What do
I
you need
just-
from us tonight, Jerry?
I
Well, we
just-
built a Wawa there too, is that all
Well-
right with you, Stan?
I just
You're
want to
not
throw.
gonna suit one customer. I mean, we're just gonna be putting it there for future. I mean, we got customers coming in.
Yeah, but the grant doesn't allow
They're
it.
asking for that every
Yeah.
day. By the time we get it built, there'll be 10 people wanting to build there.
Well, they'll be putting their line in, and if they want to share their line with somebody else, they'd be happy, that'd
I'm
be
just
fun to
being
do.
facetious. Go ahead.
But I just really wanted to get your approval of the,
Do you need a
not run the,
motion?
run the line to the north end, but ending it on Sunpure.
Do you need a motion for that or just a
Yeah.
general consensus?
I think general consensus is fine.
Okay, well,
fine
I'm
with
okay
me.
with it.
Don't have a
Okay.
problem
I'm
with it.
okay with it.
Stanley,
Do what?
are you okay with it?
I'm outvoted, but I just think it's crazy. I mean, it don't matter. We're just suiting we're suiting more so one person by stopping it where we're stopping it than running it on up to the end of the county line.
There would still be connection fees.
Oh, from the legal standpoint of view, I know what you're saying is right, but we're still serving only one person more so than if we run it on up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is an argument in that, Jerry, that if you're right now you're talking about stopping basically at the corner of Sunpure and that extra
Lemon.
little
Lemon.
And what is there? The Sunpure factory is there.
Correct.
So by definition, aren't you more so serving Sunpure?
No, because the area of growth is that area of groves there. It's now in that area. And
the
and if you want to
east.
extend.
So it concerns future
Yeah.
development, not
To the south.
existing building.
Well, and that's really what the grant is for.
But the grant isn't for residential, the grant is for economic, for industrial, commercial.
Right.
So we're not supposed to be looking at the residential supposedly for the growth.
But you could have all kinds of growth with the residential in there, all kinds of strip malls and things like that. I mean, it's the way I've seen it before. But that's up to you. I mean, and like I said, we don't have to pick where we're putting the lift station at this moment. I just think that running the pipe there is.
And then everyone else will have to put their own pipe to connect to it, is what you're saying,
Right,
right?
right.
So someone would have to have some skin in the game if it's put where he's suggesting. And anyone else wanting to hook up will have to pay for their own lines, and they'll have to pay their connect fee and all that.
They'd have to do the same thing if you run it onto the county line.
Not if the line's already there,
They're gonna have to pay to hook onto it.
but they won't have to pay for the line.
That's true.
So if you put it where they want to put it, then someone else has to pay for the line. And the way this grant is going, we might run out of money anyway.
We have discussed the fact that we need to put together a summary of what we know and keep updating the summary for you, so you start getting a feel for what we're talking in order of magnitude, because we know it's exceeding the grant, well exceeding the grant right now. So we don't know how well exceeded it's going to be, but I talked to the city manager about us putting together basically just a summary of those costs, so we have something for you to see each time we meet, and they're going to increase. But we want you to have an idea. At some point, you might want to say, "Whoa, this is getting out of hand," and we don't want to be $250,000 south by the time you do that.
So who's gonna, I don't have a map in front of me, but you're saying it would go closer to Highway 27, right?
There's only
But
one
we
person.
won't go under the railroad track, in other words. So whoever wants
Yeah,
to
we will.
connect to it
Yeah,
is
we
gonna have to go under the tracks themselves.
Well, we don't
No,
have
we
to.
are?
In order to
'Cause
get it
that's
to
the most
Lim,
expensive part.
in order to get it to Lemon, it has to come under the railroad track.
Okay.
That railroad track is the largest barrier to all of
Right.
this project. Yeah.
So what happens if we run out of money before we get there? And let's just say the contract for the construction comes back and it's more money to get to that. Could we make that a line item in the construction budget so that we know whether or not we're gonna have the money to do that, if the grant pays for it? Could it be an add-on in the construction document? I know I'm getting out of hand here, but
No, we can-
it's something that we have to consider. If we're going the
Yeah.
route that we're thinking, we went from 20 to 90 or 90 whatever for the,
Sure. You can draft your bid request any way you want to. So if you want to have, break down light items by larger projects, just bear in mind that somebody prices it, they're going to assume that maybe I might not get these parts, but I get this part, because they're
Yeah.
going to have to commit.
But what
to
I'm
do
just
the
trying to
parts.
say is, we're talking about putting this lift station at a particular area, and if it's beyond the railroad tracks, which is the most expensive part, if that's an add-on that we can subtract out of a construction contract, then still, the developers pay for that, but then we only go as far as the grant pays.
Well, we might put them in as options.
That's what I mean, options, add-ons,
Because if you
whatever.
put them as separate bid quotes, then they're going to say, well, if I don't only get this part, I want to do it for a lot more than if I did the whole thing.
Oh, my gosh.
That's
well,
just the
then,
way
you
it
know,
works. That's the way it works.
Right. Let's not forget that we have plenty of infrastructure dollars to complete this project, regardless. So,
I know, but just because we have the money doesn't mean we have to spend it.
well, I understand that, but I'm saying you should view the project as a whole,
Oh, I get
Because
that,
if you
I
don't
get
go
that.
underneath, then I doubt it will succeed. So you can't hamper it to the point where it wouldn't succeed, and then you also run the risk of, like Jerry was saying, of having higher bids and the whole lot.
Well,
is-
all I can say is we keep on falling back on, we've got the money, and heck, if that's the case, why don't we just give everybody a raise? We just go ahead and start fix the brick.
because that would be unwise, Maria.
Right, and that's my point. I think that we always have to be cognizant of our funding. If we have reasons to believe that it's not gonna save us any money, then so be it. But it doesn't hurt to have options and to discuss it. I mean, I do it with my house. I don't see why we don't do this with the city. Just because we have it
that was
doesn't mean
the-
that we should just spend it, That's just my feeling on
I
that,
get it. Okay. Any other questions on number 11? Barry? And then
Nope, that's it.
We'll take a quick break after this item.
Yep, that's all I
I'm
had.
sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing back here, but the intersection you're talking about is Sunpure and what cross
Lemon.
street?
Lemon.
Lemon. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And I can tell you they're doing work out at Sunpure because we've driven by and seen
Mm-hmm.
power crews out there and bush trimming going on. So I don't know what that
And they put a
means.
new well down just north of that building this week too.
Yeah, so I just know, but it's Sunpure and Lemon. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Thank you. All right, anything else on item number 11?
No.
Seeing none, that concludes that. We'll take a small break. 5 minutes.
Go.
Sitting here's the break.